History of Mauritius. Published December the 9th, 2017. Special characters are denoted as follows: and, left and right parentheses, a bullet point, an M dash. The known history of Mauritius begins with its discovery by Arabs, followed by Europeans, and its appearance on maps in the early 16th century. Mauritius was successively colonized by the Dutch, the French and the British, and became independent in 1968. Part 1. Discovery. Mauritius was first discovered by the Arabs. This is corroborated by the earliest existing historical evidence of an island, now known as Mauritius, which is on a map produced by the Italian cartographer Alberto Cantino in 1502. Cantino shows 3 islands which are thought to represent the Mascarenes: Reunion, Mauritius and Rodrigues, and calls them Dina Margabin, Dina Arobi. What is known is that the medieval Arab world called the southwestern Indian Ocean island region Wak Wak. Citation needed. Part 2. Portuguese discoveries. 1507 to 1513. Mauritius was later discovered and visited by the Portuguese between 1507 and 1513. Mauritius and surrounding islands were known as the Mascarene Islands, Ilhas Mascarenhas, after Pedro Mascarenhas. An official world map by Diogo Ribeiro described, from west to east, the first island, Mascarenhas, the second, Santa Apollonia, and the third, Domingo Frois. The 3 islands, Reunion, Mauritius and Rodrigues, were encountered some years earlier by chance during an exploratory expedition of the coast of the Bay of Bengal led by Tristão da Cunha. The expedition ran into a cyclone and was forced to change course. Thus, the ship Cern of the captain Diogo Fernandes Pereira came into view of Reunion Island on the 9th of February 1507. They called the island Santa Apollonia. St. Apollonia. In honor of that day's saint, Mauritius was encountered during the same expedition and received the name of Cern, and Rodrigues that of Diogo Fernandes. 5 years later, the islands were visited by Dom Pedro de Mascarenhas, who left the name Mascarene for the whole region. The Portuguese took no interest in these isolated islands. They were already established in Asia, in Goa, on the coast of Malabar, on the island of Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, and on the Malaysian coast. Their main African base was in Mozambique, therefore the Portuguese navigators preferred to use the Mozambique Channel to go to India. The Comoros at the north proved to be a more practical port of call. Thus no permanent colony was established on the island by the Portuguese. Part 3. Dutch East India Company era. 1598 to 1710. In 1598, the second Dutch expedition to Indonesia, consisting of 8 ships, under the orders of Admirals Jacques Cornelius van Neck and Wybrandt van Warwick, set sail from Texel, Netherlands, towards the Indian subcontinent. The 8 ships ran into foul weather after passing the Cape of Good Hope, and were separated. 3 found their way to the northeast of Madagascar, while the remaining 5 regrouped and sailed in a southeasterly direction. On the 17th of September, the 5 ships under the orders of Admiral van Warwick came into view of Mauritius. On the 20th of September, they entered a sheltered bay which they named Port de Warwick, now known as Grand Port. They landed and decided to name the island Prins Maurits van Nassau Island, after the son of William the Silent, WILLIAM_THE_SILENTPRINCE Moritz. Latin version, Mauritius. Of the House of Nassau, the stafholder of most of the Dutch Republic, and after the main vessel of the fleet, the Mauritius. From that time, only the name Mauritius has remained. On the 2nd of October, the ships again took to the sea towards Bantam, Some of the descendants of William of Orange through the female line reside in Mauritius, including Jill Holloway, a distinguished businesswoman, marine journalist and writer. From then on, the island's port de Warwick was used by the Dutch as a stopover after long months at sea. In 1606, two expeditions came for the first time to what would later become Port Louis in the northwest part of the island. The expedition, consisting of 11 ships and 1,357 men under the orders of Admiral Corneille, came into the bay, which they named Raid des Tortues, literally meaning Harbour of the Tortoises, because of the great number of terrestrial tortoises they found there. From that date, Dutch sailors shifted their choice to Raid des Tortues as a harbour. In 1615, the shipwreck and death of Governor Peter Both, who was coming back from India with 4 richly laden ships in the bay, led Dutch sailors to consider the route as cursed, and they tried to avoid it as much as possible. In the meantime, the British and the Danes were beginning to make incursions into the Indian Ocean. Those who landed on the island freely cut and took with them the precious heartwood of the ebony trees, then found in profusion all over the island. Dutch colonization started in 1638 and ended in 1710, with a brief interruption between 1658 and 1666. Numerous governors were appointed, but continuous hardships such as cyclones, droughts, pest infestations, lack of food, and illnesses finally took their toll, and the island was definitively abandoned in 1710. The island was not permanently inhabited for the first 40 years after its discovery by the Dutch, but in 1638 Cornelius Goer established the first permanent Dutch settlement in Mauritius with a garrison of 25. He thus became the first governor of the island. In 1639, 30 more men came to reinforce the Dutch colony. Goer was instructed to develop the commercial potential of the island, but he did nothing of the sort, so he was recalled. His successor was Adriaan van der Stel, who began the development in earnest, developing the export of ebony wood. For that purpose, Van der Stel brought 105 Malagasy slaves to the island. Within the first week, about 60 slaves were able to escape into the forests. About 20 of them were recaptured. In 1644, the islanders were faced with many months of hardships due to delayed shipment of supplies, bad harvests, and cyclones. During those months, the colonists could only rely on their own ability to feed themselves by fishing and hunting. Nonetheless, Van der Stel secured the shipment of 95 more slaves from Madagascar before being transferred to Ceylon. His replacement was Jacob van der Meesch. In 1645, the latter brought in 108 more Malagasy slaves. Van der Meesch left Mauritius in September 1648 and was replaced by Rainier Poor. In 1652, more hardships befell the inhabitants, colonists and slaves alike. The population was then about 100 people. The continuing hardships affected the commercial potential of the island, and a pullout was ordered in 1657. On the 16th of July 1658, almost all the inhabitants left the island, except for a ship's boy and 2 slaves who had taken shelter in the forests. Thus the first attempt at colonization by the Dutch ended badly. In 1664, a second attempt was made, but this one also ended badly as the men chosen for the job abandoned their sick commander, Van Nieland, without proper treatment, and he would die. From 1666 to 1669, Dirk Jans Smeent administered the new colony at Port de Warwick, with the cutting down and export of ebony trees as the main activity. When Dirk Jans Smeent left, he was replaced by George Frederick Rudden, who died in 1672, drowned with 5 other colonists during a reconnaissance expedition. His replacement would be Hubert Hugo. Hugo was a man of vision and wanted to make the island into an agricultural colony. His vision was not shared by his superiors, and he eventually had to abandon the attempt. Isaac Johannes Lamotius became the new governor when Hugo left in 1677. Lamotius governed until 1692, when he was deported to Batavia for judgment for persecuting a colonist whose wife had refused his courtship. A new governor, Rolf Diodati, was then appointed in 1692. Diodati faced many problems in his attempts to develop the island, such as cyclones, pest infestations, cattle illnesses, and droughts. Discouraged, Diodati eventually gave up, and his replacement would be Abraham Momber van de Velde. The latter fared no better, but remained the last Dutch governor of the island until it was abandoned in 1710. Slaves were not particularly well treated by the colonists, and revolts or the act of organizing one were severely repressed and punished. Some punishments consisted of amputation of various parts of the body and exposure in the open air for a day as example to others, eventually culminating in condemned slaves' execution at sunset. Citation needed. Legacy of the Dutch in Mauritius include providing the name for the country and for many regions over the whole island. Some examples include Peterboth Mountain and the Vandermeersch region near Rose Hill, as well as many other names. Introduction of sugarcane plants from Java. Decimating the local dodo and giant tortoise populations for food and by introducing competing species and pests, sometimes involuntarily. Clearing of large swaths of forests for ebony bark exploitation. Part 4. French Rule 1710 to 1810. Abandoned by the Dutch, the island became a French colony when, in September 1715, Guillaume de Friend d'Arcel landed and took possession of this port of call on the route to India. He named the island Isle de France, but it was only in 1721 that the French started their occupation. However, it was only from 1735, with the arrival of the French governor, Marie de la Bourdonnais, that Isle de France started developing effectively. Marie de la Bourdonnais established Port Louis as a naval base and a shipbuilding center. Under his governorship, numerous buildings were built, a number of which still stand today. Part of Government House, the Château de Montplaisir at Pamplemousse and the Line Barracks. The island was under the administration of the French East India Company, which maintained its presence until 1767. In 1806 the Governor-General, Charles Matthew Isidore Decaen, created the city of Mahogue, named in honor of Marie de la Bourdonnais. It was originally known as Bourg Mahy. From that year until 1810, the island was in charge of officials appointed by the French government, except for a brief period during the French Revolution, when the inhabitants set up a government virtually independent of France. During the Napoleonic Wars, the Isle de France had become a base from which French corsairs organized successful raids on British commercial ships. The raids continued until 1810, when a strong British expedition was sent to capture the island. A preliminary attack was foiled at Grand Port in August 1810, but the main attack launched in December of the same year from Rodriguez, which had been captured during the same year, was successful. Rodriguez was before visited for only fresh water and food by the British in 1809. The British landed in large numbers in the north of the island and rapidly overpowered the French, who capitulated. By the Treaty of Paris in 1814, the Isle de France, which was renamed Mauritius, was ceded to Great Britain, together with Rodriguez and the Seychelles. In the act of capitulation, the British guaranteed that they would respect the languages, the customs, the laws and the traditions of the inhabitants. Part 5. British Rule 1810 to 1968. Despite the only French naval victory during the Napoleonic Wars of Battle of Grand Port on 19 and the 20th of August 1810 by a fleet commanded by Pierre Bouvet, Mauritius was captured on the 3rd of December 1810 by the British under Commodore Josias Rowley. Their possession of the island was confirmed 4 years later by the Treaty of Paris. 1814. French institutions, including the Napoleonic Code of Law, were maintained. The French language was at that moment still used more widely than English. The British administration, which began with Robert Townsend Farquhar as governor, was followed by rapid social and economic changes. One of the most important events was the abolition of slavery on the 1st of February 1835. The planters received a compensation of £2 million for the loss of their slaves which had been imported from Africa and Madagascar during the French occupation. Sir George Ferguson Bowen was governor from 1879 to 1883. Mauritian Creoles trace their origins to the plantation owners and slaves who were brought to work the sugar fields. When slavery was abolished on the 1st of February 1835, an attempt was made to secure a cheap source of adaptable labor for intensive sugar plantations in Mauritius. Indentured labor began with Chinese, Malay, African and Malagasy laborers, but ultimately, it was India which supplied the much-needed laborers to Mauritius. This period of intensive use of Indian labor took place during British rule, with many brutal episodes and a long struggle by the indentured for respect. The term applied to the indentured during this period, and which has since become a derogatory term for Mauritians of Asian descent, was coolie. The island soon became the key point in the trade of indentured laborers, as thousands of Indians set forth from Calcutta or Karikal. Not only did they modify the social, political and economic physiognomies of the island, but some also went farther, to the West Indies. Indo-Mauritians are descended from Indian immigrants who arrived in the 19th century via the Pravasi Ghat in order to work as indentured laborers after slavery was abolished in 1835. Included in the Indo-Mauritian community are Muslims, about 17% of the population. From the Indian subcontinent, the Franco-Mauritian elite controls nearly all of the large sugar estates and is active in business and banking. As the Indian population became numerically dominant and the voting franchise was extended, political power shifted from the Franco-Mauritians and their Creole allies to the Indo-Mauritians. The meeting of a mosaic of people from India, China, Africa and Europe began a process of hybridization and intercultural frictions and dialogues, which poet Ka'al Torabali has termed coolitude. This social reality is a major reference for identity opened to otherness and is widely used in Mauritius where it represents a humanism of diversity. Conflicts arose between the Indian community, mostly sugarcane laborers, and the Franco-Mauritians in the 1920s, leading to several, mainly Indian, deaths. Following this, the Mauritius Labour Party was founded in 1936 by Maurice Kyo to safeguard the interest of the labourers. Kyo was succeeded a year later by Emmanuel Anquetil, who tried to gain the support of the port workers. After his death, Guy Rismont took over the leadership of the party. The Mauritius Territorial Force, comprising coastal artillery and infantry formations, was created in 1934. Due to the escalation of the Second World War, the force expanded to comprise 2 battalions. It was renamed the Mauritius Regiment in 1943. The 1st Battalion, with a strength of 1,000 men, landed in Diego Suarez on December 1943 to relieve imperial forces who had invaded and seized the island from Vichy France in the 1942 Battle of Madagascar. Shortly after landing, the battalion mutinied due to protests at their conditions and the breaking of their guarantee they would not leave Mauritius. Disarmed by the King's African Rifles, 300 soldiers were arrested and 500 soldiers tried, but only 6 remained imprisoned. By 1946 there was also a Home Guard formation, the Mauritius Defence Force of 2,000 men and a Naval Coastal Defence Force. Part 6. Independence. 1968. Elections in 1947 for the newly created Legislative Assembly marked Mauritius' first steps towards self-rule, and were won by the Labour Party, headed by Guy Rismont. It was the first time the elite francophones were ousted from power. An independence campaign gained momentum after 1961, when the British agreed to permit additional self-government and eventual independence. a coalition composed of the Mauritian Labour Party, MLP, the Muslim Committee of Action, CAM, of Sir Abdul Razak Muhammad, and the Independent Forward Bloc, IFB, a traditionalist Hindu party, won a majority in the 1967 Legislative Assembly election, despite opposition from Franco-Mauritian and Creole supporters of Sir Gaetan Duval QCS and Jules Koenig's Mauritian Social Democratic Party, PMSD. The contest was interpreted locally as a referendum on independence. The election was won by a small margin. Constituency No. 15 was key to the victory by the pro-independence coalition. The MLP-led alliance was able to win this constituency only due to the support of the CAM. Sir Sagaram Ghulam, a very popular medical practitioner who tremendously helped and supported the poor and the workers' community, MLP leader and chief minister in the colonial government, became the first prime minister after independence, on the 12th of March 1968. This event was preceded by a period of communal strife, brought under control with assistance from British troops. The communal strife that preceded independence led to around 300 deaths. When British rule ended on the 12th of March 1968, the Mauritius Independence Act 1968 transformed the British Crown colony of Mauritius into an independent sovereign Commonwealth realm. The British monarch, Elizabeth II, remained head of state. Mauritius shared the sovereign with the other Commonwealth realms. The monarch's constitutional roles were mostly delegated to the Governor-General of Mauritius. The royal succession was governed by the English Act of Settlement of 1701. The last governor, Sir John Shaw Rennie, served as the first Governor-General until the 27th of August 1968. Elizabeth II visited Mauritius 24th to the 26th of March 1972 in her capacity as Queen of Mauritius. 1969 saw the emergence of the movement Militant Mauricien led by Paul Berenger. The MMM was founded in 1969 and had for president and secretary Hirail Al Boogaloo and Paul Berenger respectively. The MMM won its first election in a by-election of Constituency No. 5 by electing Dev Veerasolmi. Until 1982, Sir Sagaram Ghulam was Prime Minister, his Labour Party in coalition with Duval's PMSD. In 1982, the coalition of Movement Militant Mauricien/Parti Socialiste Mauricien came to power in a landslide electoral victory, with Sir Anirudh Jugnauth QC as Prime Minister and Harish Budhu as the Deputy Prime Minister. The coalition split in 1983, with Sir Anirudh Jugnauth QC forming the Movement Socialist Mauricien (MSM), which became the governing party, with Jugnauth as Prime Minister. Sir Sagaram Ghulam subsequently became Governor-General. After Sir Saga's death, first Sir Satkam Bulal, then Sir Saga's unique son, Dr. Naveen Ram Ghulam, a charismatic leader, a medical practitioner and holder of a degree in law, succeeded him as leaders of the MLP. However, the MLP and PMSD were defeated at the 1991 election, which saw Sir Anirudh Jugnauth QC re-elected under a MMM/MSM government. The Republic of Mauritius was proclaimed on the 12th of March 1992. It is the most recent former Commonwealth realm to become a republic within the Commonwealth. Following the abolition of the monarchy, the last Governor-General of Mauritius, Sir Veerasimha Ringadu, became the first President of Mauritius. Part 6, Independence Chapter 1, Republic. 1992. In December 1991, the Constitution was amended to make Mauritius a republic within the Commonwealth. Mauritius became a republic on the 12th of March 1992, with the last Governor-General, Sir Veerasimha Ringadu, as interim president. He was succeeded by Kassim Uteam on the 30th of June 1992. Drive Naveen Ram Ghulam led a MLP-MMM coalition to victory at the 1995 general elections, replacing Sir Ranier Rudge QC as Prime Minister, a post the latter had occupied for 13 years. The governing coalition split in 1997, with the MMM going back to the opposition and Dr. Naveen Ramgoolam staying on as Prime Minister. At the next elections in 2000, Sir Ranarudge MSM, in coalition with Paul Berenger's MMM, was returned to power, with Sir Ranarudge QC appointed as Prime Minister. He subsequently retired as Prime Minister after 3 years and assumed the office of President. For the remaining time of the elected government, the Prime Minister's post was filled by Paul Berenger. At the 2005 general elections, the MLP-led Alliance Social Coalition won the elections, and Dr. Naveen Ramgoolam became Prime Minister while Sir Ranarudge QC remained the President. The 2010 general elections saw the victory of a MLP-MSM-PMSD coalition, known as l'Alliance de l'Avenir, and the maintaining of Dr. Naveen Ramgoolam as Prime Minister. A year or so later, Sir Ranarudge QC left the presidency and was replaced by Kailash Pariyag, an attorney-at-law and politician, who has served the country as senior minister on many occasions under the leadership of Dr. Naveen Ramgoolam. The 2014 general elections saw the victory of a MSM-PMSD-ML coalition, known as l'Alliance LEPEP, and Sir Ranier Rudge became Prime Minister while Kailash Pariyag remained the President until 2016 when Mrs. Amina Garib Fakim became the President. This recording is a derivative work from Wikipedia. For more information, please visit www.frogcast.org.